Welcome, everybody, to WiseTake.com MMA DFS podcast. I'm your host, Jeff, aka Wigspitter. You can find me on Twitter at JEFPO. You can also find us at Wise_Take on Twitter. If you're not already a WiseTake.com subscriber, make sure you head on over to WiseTake.com. You can pick up a day pass for Major League Baseball. It's only $2.50. You'll gain access to all the pro contents. Also, if you're watching this, that means you're into MMA DFS. Make sure you head on over to WiseTake.com. You can pick up a MMA event pass for only $4.99. That will give you access to all the premium content, full fighter breakdown article that I write after all my research is completed, and a live stream the day of the event early in the morning. It's usually 11:30 a.m. Eastern time. Depending on the event, it could be earlier, especially if it's like overseas. But let's get right into this card. The first fight on the Fight Pass early prelims, we have Rani Yahya going up against Luke Sanders. Now, this is a stylistic match. Luke Sanders is not that he's a one-trick pony, but he definitely has one major thing that he uses, which is his striking. Now, Luke Sanders' salary is $7,900, and Yaya's salary is $8,300. Now, Rani Yahya is a world-class Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu grappler. He has 19 submission victories on his record. It just so happens that I have Luke Sanders has one submission loss. I think this is a fairly close fight. I think both these guys are, I wouldn't say evenly matched. I think Luke Sanders has more power. Definitely has more power. He's going to use it. But Yahya he's slick, man. He's going to work his way. Luke Sanders is either going to try to land something powerful, and I don't think that's going to happen. I think Yaya's he only absorbs 1.47 significant strikes per minute, so his defense is fairly well. Now, he does have Yahya does have 2 knockout losses on his record, so it's not in the realm of it's not out of the question, but I don't see Luke Sanders other than maybe he's able to maybe reverse position on the floor and maybe get some ground and pound and finish Yahya that way. But I think that's going to be playing right into Yaya's hand, and I think Yaya's going to probably pull this off with another submission victory over Luke Sanders. I think Yahya is definitely GPP viable. If he could get that early submission, he's definitely going to pay off his salary. Saunders, if he could get that early knockout victory, I don't see it happening. I think Yahya is definitely going to give Luke Sanders all he can handle. But I like Yahya to win this fight. I do definitely, first look, I think Yahya and Sanders are definitely GPP viable. Moving on to the next fight, we have Drew Dober going up against John the Super Cyan Tuck. I actually forgot about John Tuck. I didn't realize he was still in the UFC. Dober, his salary is $8,900. He's got 4 wins by knockout, 9 by submission. Tuck, his salary is $7,300. He has 4 wins by knockout and 5 wins by submission. Dober, I believe he is from Nebraska. I mean, he might even be from Omaha, Nebraska. I'd have to look, which is like 30 minutes away from Lincoln. I'd have to look a little bit more into it, but I believe this is like his home state. So he's going to have a huge following. I like Dober to win the fight at $8,900. He's going to need a stoppage though in order to pay off his salary. I don't think that's going to happen. I think it's probably going to go more towards a decision. So I think Dober may be safe for cash. So that's all, I'm going to put it like that. Moving on to the next fight, we have Jojo Calderwood, going up against Kalindra Faria. Calderwood's salary is $8,800. Faria's salary is $7,400. Calderwood has 5 knockout wins. Faria has 7 knockout wins with 5 submission wins as well. She has 1 knockout loss and 3 submission losses. Calderwood has 2 submission losses. This is a dangerous fight, I think, for Calderwood. I think both these ladies are like back against the wall type of thing. I think they're going to bring it. I believe Calderwood's been training primarily at Alliance for this fight camp, and the Performance Institute, from what I read, I believe. I know previous camps she was at TriStar, and then she'd go back home, and then she'd go back to TriStar. So when you break up your camp like that's a lot of traveling. You're not getting the focus or the full attention you're going to need for your fight. I think this is going to be a decision. I don't see. I mean, theoretically, you can easily say that it's a possibility that Faria can submit Calderwood, but I think Calderwood is probably going to want to keep the fight standing, and her takedown defense is fairly solid. So if Faria can't land the takedown and avoid getting pieced up on the feet, I think Calderwood should cruise to a decision victory. But at 8,800, a decision, she'd have to put an extremely large amount of strikes out in order for her to pay off her salary at 8,800. She'd have to put in well over 100 significant strikes, which is going to be a tough task. So personally, if I was going to do anything with this fight, I'd probably go Faria as a GPP flyer for the submission upside. Calderwood has shown that she has been submitted before. And both these ladies have their backs against the wall when it comes to their contracts, so they're going to be putting it all on the line. All right, now moving on to the next fight. It's a fairly intriguing fight because you have basically an older aging fighter in George Sullivan going up against Mickey Gall. Mickey Gall's I'm not going to get into Mickey Gall, but Mickey Gall's salary is $9,200. He's the fourth highest salary on this card. George Sullivan's salary is $7,000. I think George Sullivan has 11 knockouts in his career. Mickey Gall has a 100% finish rate, but they're all by submission. And that's definitely what he's going to be doing. He's going to definitely try to get this fight to the ground and work for a submission. George Sullivan's takedown defense is suspect, so there's a high probability that that could happen. Mickey Gall has shown that he eats some punches. That's the only thing that scares me about Mickey Gall. At 9,200, he's going to need that early submission, which is highly probable, but there is risk though, because I mean George Sullivan is he's a veteran, and Gall only has 5 fights in his career. Sullivan has 24, so experience could come into play, and Sullivan could squeak out a decision victory. But Gall's going to definitely be going for those submissions, and especially if you're going for GPPs at 9,200, he could be, of the higher priced fighters, he could be one of the lower owned, just because he has been shown that he's not necessarily consistent when it comes to his fighting. Because I mean, if you think about it, Eric Anders' salary is 9,700. Barberena is 9,500, who's in a favorable spot. Anders is in a favorable spot, but it's not like they're walkthrough fights anyway. So It's going to be interesting. I'd like to see. I can't wait to see what kind of ownership Gall gets, but I think he could be one of the lower owned fighters. I like Gall to win this fight, possibly by a second round submission. Sullivan, he's going to need to definitely keep the fight standing and just outpunch and outwork Mickey Gall on the feet. But I think Mickey Gall is just going to be too young and tenacious for him and work through it. Moving on to the next fight, we have Andrew Sanchez versus Marcus Perez. Yeah, I don't know about this one myself, actually. I'm still sort of on the fence on who I like. It's basically Marcus Perez's salary is $8,200. Andrew Sanchez's salary is $8,000. Andrew Sanchez has, in his career, he has 5 knockout wins and 2 submission wins in his career. He also has 3 knockout losses. Marcus Perez has 3 knockout wins and 4 submission wins to his record, and he has no knockout losses or submission losses so far. So his only loss came by decision. My gut tells me Perez, that Perez is going to outwork him on the feet, but I think it's probably, when it comes to GPPs, I think this fight's probably going to go to a decision. So I think, at 8,000, there's probably going to be a lot of scrambling, maybe some transitions on the mat. So it's possible that this could be a fun fight to watch from a grappling standpoint. I'm not sure if it's going to stay standing as much. If it does stay standing, I think Andrew Sanchez has the crisper striking. I think Perez is probably going to want to work for a takedown and get that submission. But I'm gonna stick with my gut. I'm gonna say Marcus Perez wins. I like Perez for GPPs. But this fight, it's definitely both these guys are GPP viable because it's sort of a coin toss of a fight. Not that they're fairly evenly matched. Sanchez definitely has the more active striking, and Marcus Perez is definitely more dangerous when it comes to the ground. But I'm going to stick with my gut. I think Marcus Perez is going to pull off the victory. Let's move on to the next fight. Corey Sandhagen versus Yuri Marajo Alcantara. Sandhagen's salary is $9,000. Alcantara's salary is $7,200. He has 14 wins by knockout, 14 by submission. He has 1 knockout loss and 2 submission losses to his credit. Corey Sandhagen has 3 wins by knockout, 2 wins by submission, and no losses by either knockout or submission to his record. He only has 9 professional fights. Now, Corey Sandhagen, I believe he's coming off of a win over Austin Arnett, which isn't necessarily the greatest thing. Alcantara is he's been fairly inconsistent when it comes to his fighting as well. I think this is going to be definitely a solid fight between the two. And let's see here. Let me pull it up real quick. Yeah, so Alcantara's coming off a win over Joe Soto. It was a TKO win. Excuse me. And then he had 2 losses. 1 to Alejandro Perez and Brian Kelleher. And then he had a submission win over Luke Sanders and another submission win over Brad Pickett before that. Now, if experience comes into play on this one, if you're looking at it definitely from a experience standpoint, then you're definitely going to want to side with Alcantara. But if you're looking at it from like a matchup standpoint, I think Alcantara is definitely going to have the advantage there as well. Now, is Sandhagen going to take Alcantara down? Is he going to want to get into his guard and mess with that BJJ black belt? I don't think so. I mean, it's so if he can keep the fight standing, he usually has a high rate of output. He does get hit a lot. I like Alcantara for GPPs just because he has the power and the submission upside, and Sandhagen has shown that he eats a lot of punches. His defense isn't necessarily the greatest. Neither is Alcantara's, but for GPPs at 7,200, it leaves you a lot of wiggle room when it comes to building your roster. Now, if you're looking for a safe floor, maybe Corey Sandhagen could be safe for cash. You can get away with a loss in cash, but at 9,000, you definitely can have with a few $100s more, or a few $100 less, you can have a safer floor. But I like Alcantara for GPPs. I do think Corey Sandhagen may pull off a decision victory in this one. I don't see it being a stoppage unless it's a flash KO, but I like Alcantara for GPPs. Now, moving on to the next fight, we have James Krause versus Warley Alves. James Krause's salary is $6,900. He has 6 wins by knockout, 14 by submission. He has 1 knockout loss and 2 losses by submission. 1 knockout loss and 2 knockout losses by submission. Warley Alves' salary is $9,300. He has 2 knockout wins and 6 submission victories to his credit. Krause has been transitioning for a while into the business owner slash trainer developer of fighters as of recent. And some of his guys, I mean, if you watch Tuesday night, Dana White's Tuesday Night Contender Series, a couple of his fighters have looked fairly well in the cage, especially in their debut fights. Excuse me. From a GPP standpoint, I definitely can see. I could definitely see James Krause as a GPP flyer. Now, hear me out. Warley Alves. Warley Alves has fought Sultan Aliyev. He got a TKO. He had a decision victory over Salim Tuhari. He had a decision loss decision loss to Kamaru Usman, decision loss to Brian Barberena. He submitted Kobe Covington. He submitted Nordin Taleb, Alan Jouban. He's beaten some decent guys. Now, James Krause, on the other hand, he's riding a 4-fight win streak, and he's a point fighter, so he's basically just going to go to a decision. That's what he's going to go for. He did have a submission victory over Darren Cruikshank, but the level of fighter that James Krause has been beating isn't the Warley Alves. Now, this could be one of those ones where just everybody's going to be overlooking James Krause, and he just comes in and surprises everybody. And that's what you want in a GPP. You want that guy that nobody's going to be on. And I think James Krause is going to be that dude. And at 6,900, if you pair him with Yuri Alcantara, and you start with those two guys and you just go crazy, right? You can fit almost anybody you want in your lineup. And it's a boom or bust play, but I think I like it. I think Warley Alves definitely has a high chance of winning this fight. It's going to be a tough fight because Krause has, he fights well from distance. But I think Warley Alves is one of those competitors that just, I think it's going to be a little too much for James Krause. Almost as if I'm trying to think who he fought that was similar. I think he had a decision loss to Jorge Masvidal, and I think this is going to be similar to that, except for Warlley Alves is a little more dangerous on the feet and on the mat when it comes to overall. So moving on to the next fight, like I said, I like James Krause as a GPP option flyer, but I think Warlley Alves is going to pull off the victory. Now, moving on to the next fight, the first fight on the FS1 main card, we have Eric Anders going up against Tim Williams. This is Tim Williams' salary $6,500. He has 2 wins by knockout, 9 by submission. He has 3 knockout losses. Eric Anders' salary is $9,700, and he he has 6 wins by knockout and 1 by submission. Eric Anders is, he's a former Alabama Crimson Tide football player, transitioning into MMA. Very athletic, strong. It's arguable that you can say that he lost his last fight to Lyoto Machida. It was a split decision. But, I mean, if he was a little more active in that last round, he definitely could have pulled off the victory. Actually, if the 4th and 5th round, if he could have been a little more active, I think he could have, or if he would have landed one of those takedowns, maybe had a little more control, but he was gassed, man, at the end of that fight. And, I think he would have had a better opportunity to win. Now, Tim Williams, he's coming off a knockout loss by Oscar Pichota. It's in the first round. I mean, it was pretty brutal. And then before that, he had, I believe it was 5 wins in a row. Nobody necessarily notable. But majority of his losses, I mean, let's see, how many losses does he have? He has 3 losses by knockout, so it's a higher probability that he gets knocked out. I think Eric Anders is, I don't want to say he's one of the safest plays on the card, but at 9,700, that's going to handicap you when it comes to building your lineups, and you're going to have to be very creative. If you're building a cash lineup, you could definitely go with Eric Anders, because if he gets that first round knockout, you're going to score well over 100 points. From a GPP standpoint, Tim Williams, is he worth a GPP flyer? Sure, but I mean, odds are saying that basically stylistically, he's going to get caught. Can he submit? Can he submit Eric Anders? Definitely. Is Eric Anders going to fall for that? I mean, he's still fairly young in his career. He's only had 11 professional fights. I would hope that he's training in jiu-jitsu, that he learns to see some of these dangerous positions that he could put himself into, especially since he has a grappling heavy base. But I think Eric Anders is definitely going to have a solid chance at winning this fight. I like Eric Anders for GPPs and cash, but like I said, at 9,700, that is rough. That is a huge hit to your salary. Now moving on to the next fight, which is, I think, should be co-main event. John Chicano Moraga versus Davison Deuce de Guerra Figueiredo. This fight, this is the fight I'm looking forward to. Figueiredo's salary is $8,400. He has 7 wins by knockout, 5 by submission. Moraga's salary $7,800. He has 3 wins by knockout, 8 by submission. He has 1 knockout loss and 1 submission loss in his career. Now Figueiredo, man, this dude, I have so much respect for this guy, man. He looks, when he goes in there, he brings it. I mean, he literally, in his last fight against Morales, man, he was just, both those guys were just standing in the pocket, just trading. His fight against Jared Brooks, that was a solid fight. I think Jared Brooks definitely could have, it was a split decision. It could have went either way. His fight against Marco Beltran, he had a TKO stoppage. Man, I mean, this dude, I like him. I mean, I like Figueroa. Is this where he gets his first loss? It's highly possible. Moraga is a dangerous dude, man. Moraga he's currently on a 3-fight win streak. He has a decision win over Wilson Hayes, a knockout win over Magomed Bibulatov. He had his decision victory over Ashkan Mokhtarian. Decision loss to Pettis. Then before that, he had a split decision loss against Pereira and a decision loss against Benavidez. Joseph Benavidez. I like this fight. I think it's definitely going to be something where they are just trading nonstop in the pocket. I think if it goes to the ground, I think they're both fairly comfortable when it comes to submissions. Moraga, I think, will be the bigger guy in there. I think he's going to be not necessarily taller, but I think he's going to be thicker once they go back and rehydrate. Man, I'm torn. I like Figueroa, but I like freaking Moraga at the same time. I mean, it's one of those things maybe you have to hedge, have one lineup with Moraga and one line with Figueroa. I mean, their salaries aren't too far off at $8,400 and $7,800. But if you go with $7,800, that gives you a lot more flexibility when you're building your lineup. They definitely both have the same. They both have the same upside. I think Figueroa may have a little bit more of a punching power advantage. Moraga has shown that he has been stopped before. Can Figueroa be the guy that, puts him out again? We'll have to see. But I like both these guys. I mean, I think definitely Figueroa has the opportunity to continue on and stay undefeated against Moraga, but I think this is a tough test. And I think both these guys, I think you might have to hedge your lineup with either one or the other, or if you're leaning one way or the other. But I like Figueroa to win the fight. I think it's possibly going to go to a decision. I don't think there's going to be a stoppage here. Now, moving on to the next fight, we have Jake the Juggernaut Ellenberger versus Brian Bam Bam Barberena. Bam Bam's salary is $9,500. He's the second highest salary on the card. He has 9 wins by knockout, 2 wins by submission, 0 knockout losses, and 1 submission loss. Ellenberger's salary is $6,700. He has 19 wins by knockout, 6 by submission. He has 6 knockout losses, as well as 2 submission losses. Now, Jake Ellenberger, back a few years ago, was a straight monster. He's been through some wars with guys like Nate Marquardt, Robbie Lawler, Rory McDonald. That fight that he had with Diego Sanchez was pretty solid. I mean, he's had some tough fights. I mean, he's beaten some pretty tough guys. Josh Koscheck, Matt Brown, Nate Marquardt. But he's had some pretty brutal losses in his last 3 fights. He got knocked out by Ben Saunders. He's got knocked out by Mike Perry. He's got knocked out by Jorge Masvidal. He got knocked out by Stephen Thompson. So, Brian Barberena going to be that guy that knocks him out again? It's possible. I like Brian Barberena. There's no way you're going to be able to fit Barberena mathematically, I think. Well, maybe there is a way you can fit Barberena and Anders in your lineup, but you're going to have 3 punts or 3 or 4 punts and hope those long shots come through. But I think you're going to have to pick and choose who your horse is going to be, whether it's going to be Eric Anders or Brian Barberena to start your lineup with. But I like Brian Barberena, possibly knockout first round of Jake Ellenberger. I think Ellenberger, I believe this is his last fight on his contract, and it's possibly his last fight in the UFC. But yeah, Brian Barberena for the win, definitely. Moving on to the next fight, which I think should have been the first fight of either the FS2 prelims or the FS1 main card. I think the Anders Williams card should have, or the Anders Williams fight or the Figueroa Moraga fight should have been a lot higher in the card, but whatever. Courtney Casey and Angela Hill, both these ladies are fairly active on the feet. Courtney Casey's salary $7,700, Angela Hill's salary $8,500. This fight's probably going to go to a decision. It's probable that Angela Hill is going to go to a decision victory. That doesn't excite me for DFS, so I'm not even going to talk about it anymore. Now, moving on to the next fight, the co-main events. Michael the Menace Johnson going up against Andre Touchy Fili of Team Alpha Male. These Alpha Male guys have been stepping up as of late. Fili's salary $7,500. He has 8 wins by knockout, 3 by submission. He has 2 knockout losses and 2 submission losses to his record. Michael Johnson is $8,700 in salary. He has 8 wins by knockout, 2 by submission, 1 loss by knockout, and 8 losses by submission. I'm gonna go with Fili. I don't trust Michael Johnson when it comes to DFS. I mean, if I had to put a bet on this fight, I'd rather go with the underdog. Michael Johnson just doesn't look good anymore. He's had some really tough battles, and I'm not taking anything away from his skill set. Don't get me wrong. I mean, he's fought some pretty tough guys. I mean, Darren Elkins, Team Alpha Male. He lost to Justin Gaethje by TKO and knees, punches and knees. He lost to Khabib. He had a win over Dustin Poirier. He had a loss to Nate Diaz. He had a loss to Beneil Dariush. But he's 1-5 over his last 6 fights. And then before that, I mean, he had a pretty decent run, but it's over guys like Melvin Gillard, who's no longer in the UFC, Gleison Tibau, Joe Lozon, Edison Barboza. So it's not like, I mean, his most notable victory as of recent is Dustin Poirier. And, it was a knockout victory. Now, Fili, the level of competition that he's been fighting isn't necessarily the greatest either. He has a decision victory over Dennis Bermudez, Artem, Alligator Arms, Lobov. He has a loss to Calvin Kattar. He has a win over Hakran Diaz. He has a loss to Yair Rodriguez because it was a head kick. Win over Gabriel Benitez. So it's not like he has the greatest competition that he's been fighting as of recent, but he has been winning. He'll sandwich a couple wins between a loss or so. He tends to be improving over his last few fights. He showed a lot higher fight IQ in the fight against Artem Lobov. He realized, I don't know if it was his corner that called it out, but he went for the takedown in the last 30 seconds of the round to steal it. Against Dennis Bermudez, he literally kept the fight standing. He stuffed majority of those takedowns, and he just kept the fight standing and pieced him up, and he won the split decision. Dennis Bermudez always loses by split decision, so it's sort of one of those things where you feel bad for the guy. Amazing talent, but Fili came out on top on that one. But I like Fili at 7,500. He's definitely a GPP value play. Michael Johnson, I definitely think he's going to be low owned. It's a probability that a lot of people may pick him just by name, but if they look at what he's been doing and how he's looked in the cage, I couldn't do it. But yeah, so I like Fili as the play in this fight. Michael Johnson, if you're feeling frisky, but not really excited about that one. Now moving on to the main event, Justin the Highlight Gaethje going up against James the Texecutioner Vick. Man, oh man. Gagey said, I am going into the cage. He goes, I only have a few fights left. And I'm going to put on a show. Now, what that tells me is he's not going in there to wrestle. He's not going in there to outpoint somebody. He's going in there to wreck somebody. The problem with that is that James Vick fights well from the outside. James Vick does have an issue with guys that are very aggressive, that come forward and throw a high volume of strikes. Let me regress. James Vick's salary is $8,600. Justin Gaethje's salary is $7,600. Gaethje has 15 wins by knockout and 1 by submission. He has 2 knockout losses to his record. James Vick has 3 knockout wins, 5 by submission, and he has 1 knockout loss. This fight is a stylistic fight, right? Gaethje's a come forward, gritty striker. He does have a little bit of grappling to him, but he doesn't use it because he relies definitely on his striking. That's his bread and butter, and that's what he does. His last submission win was back in 2012, which is 6 years ago. Now, James Vick, on the other hand, Gaethje's he's currently on a 2-fight losing streak. Gaethje's on a 4-fight winning streak. He has wins over Trinaldo, Duffy, Polo Reyes, Trujillo. He's sandwiched a loss in there with Beneil Dariush, which he lost by knockout. And then before that, he had a huge run. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 wins in a row. Then he had that loss. Wait, let's see. Oh, sorry. 1, 2, 3, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 10 wins in a row. 9 wins in a row. And then he had that loss to Beneil Dariush. And then he had 4 straight more wins. I think Gaethje has the opportunity to stop Vick. But he's going to have to get this fight dirty. He's going to have to get it into the clinch. He's going to have to fight. He's going to have to fight in the clinch. He's going to have to dirty box, rough him up, big brother him, put him up against the cage, and just make it dirty. Now, Vick, on the other hand, he's going to have a 4-inch height advantage. He's going to have a 6-inch reach advantage, and he's going to want to pick Gaethje apart. He's going to have to start he's going to have to push himself to have a fast start in this fight. He's not necessarily a slow starter, but he doesn't necessarily come forward and be aggressive as much. So I think Vick has the probability of pulling off a decision victory. From a DFS standpoint, I think Gaethje has the power to knock out Vick, who has shown that he can get knocked out. So at 7,600, I definitely could build a lineup around Gaethje, and at 8,600, you're gonna have to pick and choose, who you're gonna run with. But I think James Vick could pull off a decision victory if he can avoid getting knocked out. That is my first look for UFC Fight Night. I believe it's 135. Lincoln, Nebraska, Gaethje versus Vick. I appreciate you taking the time out to listen to me talk about MMA and DFS. Keep in mind, this is my first look, and I've done minimal research, even though we're coming off a 2-week break. I do have a day job that I have to power through, but it's fun. I love MMA and I love DFS. You can always chop it up with me on Twitter at JEFPO. And if you pick up an event pass, make sure you hit me up in the chat room. I will definitely more than be willing to talk it up with you. Lineup construction, contest selection. A lot of people make the mistakes. If you pick the wrong contest and you want to go into these big donkeys and you expect to win huge money, it's lightning in a bottle. You have to mass enter these large contests. If you're doing single entry, you're definitely going to have to come up with the right lineup construction. In order to win money, you have to be smart with your contest selection, and you have to be very, very diligent when it comes to your research and who you want to put into your lineup. But like I said, I want to thank everybody for taking the time out to listen to me. If you're not already a subscriber, make sure you hit the like button. Make sure you hit the subscribe button. Turn on notifications so you can get all of our new content for Major League Baseball, NFL. NBA is right around the corner. Soon to be coming, we have NHL. Of course, MMA. So, from the Wise Take Nation, I'm Wigspitter. As always, have fun and make that money.
Yes.